David Foster Wallace wasn't just a fan of the legendary Russian author Dostoevsky just because of his great novels, but rather he saw that Dostoevsky's philosophy as a writer is the dyadic void missing in most Western or American authors' approach to their own novels. And today we are going to hear from Wallace and explore some of his thoughts on Dostoevsky together. And if you guys don't already know, Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to David Foster Wallace here on YouTube. If you look at the playlist down below, there are over 60 videos on Wallace down there with more dropping every single day. So let us now hear from Wallace. Quote, "The big thing that makes Dostoevsky invaluable for American readers and writers is that he appears to possess degrees of passion, conviction, and engagement with deep moral issues that we here today cannot or do not permit ourselves." And what does Wallace mean by this? Well, he is talking about specifically the curse of modernism, because here in America, a lot of our literary heroes are Ernest Hemingway, James Joyce, T.S. Eliot, Pound, Kafka, even guys like Faulkner were moving within modernism. And there are so many others, but the modernists really focused on this idea of imagism and elevating the image above some of the philosophical aspects of their works. And with the image comes aesthetics, because when you read a lot of the best modernist poetry, their aesthetics are beautiful. And so in some ways, I know this isn't true all the time, the modernist legacy promotes this idea that real serious art, real writing has this kind of psychic distance away from not just real life, but real convictions. And this just doesn't end with modernism. When we look at postmodernism, and it's kind of focused on self-consciousness and social issues, but in kind of a weird way, this also kind of escapes what Dostoevsky was doing with his work. And when I look at most writers today, they don't necessarily have a degree of bravery, because being brave doesn't mean getting online and being like, abortion is right or abortion is wrong or yada, 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 and being involved in that way. But instead, he chose to integrate his art, his deep talent with politics, with these ideas, and add cultural philosophies and stuff like in The Demons or The Possessed into certain characters, and then critique them or elevate them, and do autobiographical things like the loss of his faith in the orthodoxy and then the renewal of it through characters. These are beautiful things, and what they have at the core of it is conviction, it's passion. And when you read, look at all these novels behind me. What are these novels saying? And some of these do this, and this is why they're so successful. But we do everything in America, but write with open conviction. We mask it with sentimentality, fanaticism, fantasy, sci-fi, all these different things to mask that we have these convictions and these beliefs, and we are going to say them in our writing. This book, you have your book, and this book isn't just about, it's this beautiful story that I worked really hard on and the style is really good. No, this is a statement against the endless history of America in the Middle East and the military-industrial complex. Or this is a statement against how civilization has taken out certain aspects of nature. That's what Cormac McCarthy does a lot of the time. And speaking of David Foster Wallace and Cormac McCarthy, I run a Right Conscious Substack where I have over 15 hours on Cormac McCarthy and now over 6 hours on David Foster Wallace. And this video that you are watching right now actually has a much longer version that spans over an hour, that has a video and an audio version. Some of my writing is on the Substack, and there's a bunch of other cool stuff. There's the Blood Meridian tour. And so if you like my videos and want to support me and get access to probably over 25 hours of content, and I'm dropping new stuff every single week, go check that out. The link is down in the description below. But let us once again return to this idea of passion. Dostoevsky wasn't really the best person in the world. And that's what makes writers interesting, is that we, most of the time, are just fragments of the energy that we put into our art. For instance, Dostoevsky was very vain about how he appeared in the world in regards to his writing. In the earlier parts of his career, before he got sent to, the prison camp, he was an asshole. He'd be pompously moving around the circles, claiming that he was the best writer in the world and yada, yada, yada. And eventually his second novel, The Double, didn't perform as successfully. And it kind of threw him into states of shock, and which eventually led him to the political groups that eventually got him sent to Siberia. And even when he returned, he kind of had this weird attitude. He pawned off his wife's winter coat for gambling. So many different times they went into debt and had so many problems. They had to flee Russia because of his gambling problem. He was arrogant, rude. There's all these different things about him that weren't the best in terms of of being a human, but his range of emotional experiences and being able to capture them and be ahead of his time with how modern consciousness is going to think and being self-conscious. When I read his characters, I connect to myself and so many other people in the world. And I can't necessarily say that about a lot of other 19th century novelists. And the reason Dostoevsky was able to tap into this is that he took the inward journey. He went inside of himself, at least when he got sent to the work camp, because there are so many authors who are looking horizontally around them. Because if you look just around you and write about that energy, you're going to see crazy religious people on the right that are just like way too much. And then you're going to see all the political correctness and the wokeism. And that isn't a very connected to the more important things that a writing should have that makes it feel alive: motive, feeling, beliefs. And what Wallace points out about Dostoevsky is that his convictions, his beliefs are still important to us today. And these are the questions we should be asking. Like one of which I'm not religious in like the traditional religion sense, but Dostoevsky makes us ask time and time again, does Jesus Christ have something to teach us? Even if you don't believe in him historically, or you're not religious at all, can he teach us something? And I know, as someone who has read a ton into Christianity and just contemplated on the energy of Jesus and his sacrifice and what he did, that yes, answer is an immense yes. And in the Substack, I kind of answer some of these questions. But another thing, that Dostoevsky asks us is, what does it mean to be an American or to be a Russia? Focusing on nationalism, because he took this weird mystical nationalistic turn, later in his life, which you could see a lot of people doing today. He was almost kind of one of these prototypes that led eventually to in the early 20th century, the massive push toward, mystical nationalism, which we saw with all the super fascists and the Nazis, and even the Bolsheviks were very connected to the occult, especially at the start of their kind of tenure. Another question that's involved with a lot of Dostoevsky's incel characters is, can we love other people? Can I love my little baby cat that just jumped on me? And if you become too self-conscious about love, which a lot of men do today, I mean, this is kind of like the whole weird men incel movement, where men are just acting in paralysis and can never just be outside of themselves and connect with women. But a lot of his work has to do with love, and is that possible? And that question is more important than anything, maybe any other question I'm asking, because of the collapse of the family in the Western world and the eventual decline of population rates and whatnot, and the lowering rates of happiness and health, which most of the time, if you're in a good relationship, you should be healthier, happier, and more intelligent because you're always growing and expanding. And last but not least, Dostoevsky makes us ask, am I a good person? What is a good person? What is my duty to the world? And how do I know, if I find that answer out, like my duty is to do X, Y, or Z, that's actually real and that's just not my ego or just me making something up to make myself feel better? These are the questions I explore in the longer video. These are the questions that Dostoevsky and you and I should be exploring in our writing. And if we aren't, then what are we doing? Are we just trying to impress people? Are we trying to mimic kind of the minimalistic modernist movement and the minimalistic movement that was big in the 80s and 90s that I know a lot of writers kind of turn to for inspiration? Is that the purpose of our life? Or do we have the talent to be able to infuse our convictions and our passions and beliefs into a story without it being too overt? Because you guys have all seen it before. Someone writes a story and it's like a political message and it just sucks because it's just like, it's like Ayn Rand or something, if not just way worse. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. But a master, someone who's great, can integrate the metaphors together to build this beautiful art. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for all the support. I've been grinding out a lot of the coursework, so there'll be a lot more videos over here. I know it's been a little bit slow on the uploads, but I will see you guys very soon, whether on this channel or in the Substack.